strut, strut, eight, 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 eight.
There you go.
That's right, girl. Take that step. Okay, there you go. All right. Let's take a seat.
Welcome to our campfire.
I like it a lot. This
Don't
is so
get
cool.
too close. You'll
We need
get scorched.
roast some marshmallows, you know.
I know.
Hot dogs.
I'm all about s'mores. I will give me anything s'more themed,
Yep.
and I will eat it. Does anyone remember when Starbucks had their s'more, like, what was it, Frappuccino?
Oh, we got some fans in here. S'mores, yes.
We need to, if I start a petition to bring it back, will y'all sign it? Okay, because it was amazing.
She's like, number one, I'll sign
It was
it first.
amazing.
That's
Yeah.
right. Well, speaking of camping, do you like to camp?
I do not.
Okay, that's great. So we'll move
You're
on.
in good company.
No, it's for a
love that
reason though.
glampers.
Like I grew up going to camp, and we like every session we would go like out in the woods camping. And one year, our campsite was invaded by skunks,
Oh, no.
It's very rough.
and someone was actually bit by a skunk.
Ah.
They bite? I didn't, what?
I think this person was handling food and didn't wash their hands properly, and so the skunk, like they'd fallen asleep. And this is terrifying, right? Like, this is why I don't like camping. And so the skunk bit their finger, and they had to get rabies shots.
Oh, my goodness.
It's very disturbing.
So that's a very good reason.
Yeah,
That's a very
Right?
good reason.
I
Yeah.
used to love camping. Now I'm like, ugh, I don't
Just
know.
watch out for skunks.
Yeah. All
That's
right.
it.
That's great. Well, you don't like camping, so what do you like to do, Sharon, for fun?
So my husband and I planted a church 3 years ago. And so in terms of like what we do for fun, we don't have a lot of free time, honestly. I honestly really just like hanging out with my kids. My kids are 9, 6, and 3. And they're just at that age where we're out of the toddler stage now, like we're out of the baby stage, but they're still young enough where they think my husband and I are really cool. And so
That's good.
we
Cherish
just
those
really, they're
moments.
really cute, they're really funny, they're really fun. And so that's actually like kind of my favorite thing right now is just hanging out with my kids.
Do you like TikTok? Are they TikTok fans?
Well, none of them are on social media or anything yet. They
well,
do
that's
like
good. Good job, Mom.
Poppets.
Puppets?
Yes.
You
yes.
guys, I
That's a
cannot
thing.
figure this out. My 9-year-old is all about Poppets.
Yeah.
My friend Molly's daughter is all about Poppets. We were talking to someone on the worship team who has a 7-year-old who's all about Poppets. How are these kids communicating nationwide about Poppets?
Yeah, that's,
I
don't know.
can't figure it out. So,
Yeah.
yeah, they're into Poppets.
Cool, great, love it.
So, Sharon, you're a wife.
Mm-hmm.
You're a mother. You're a ministry leader, church
Mm-hmm.
leader. You're a writer. You're a speaker. I'm exhausted just listing all of
that list,
those.
man, what do I
All
do?
of those are
Nothing.
incredibly important roles. God can use you in incredible ways in all of those roles. So based on what you shared tonight, which one of those roles, or maybe more than one, causes you the most insecurity, or where do you find yourself responding to God like, I don't know if I'm the girl for this?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think the answer to that is actually the area of my life where I find the most meaning, which is being a mother, is also the area of my greatest insecurity. You know, I believe that the ability to teach children, to disciple children, is an actual spiritual gift. Like, people who are gifted with children, I think that God actually made you that way. That is your role in the church. And that is not my gift. And so I'm excited for the day when my kids are a little bit older and I can talk to them about faith like as an adult, because I feel like that is really where I excel. But right now, I feel really clunky in like how I'm talking about faith with my kids. I don't always know if I'm discipling them very well. I also feel the added pressure of both me and my husband are pastors, and so these are kids with 2 pastor parents. And that can create so much pressure on kids to perform, you know, to be a certain image. And so I all the time just feel very inadequate like as a mother. And I don't always know. I feel also like very exposed. I mean, my oldest son is sort of known as being the worst behaved in Sunday school. And recently, one of our, and thankfully all of our leaders are amazing and they think it's hilarious. And one of them, he told us that one morning they were talking about the fruit of the Spirit, and they were talking about self-control. And he was sitting with my son and a bunch of little boys and said, have you ever been in a situation where, you didn't want to be there anymore, and maybe you were like bored, but you knew like you shouldn't say that? And my oldest goes, "You mean like right now?"
Wow.
And so I very much I feel, exposed as I'm not discipling my kids very well, but I realize right away how toxic, and we'll get into this actually tomorrow morning in my message, but how toxic it is when we, make our kids about us, we treat them as if they are a reflection on us in some way. And so I've had to really walk that out and also know that this is why we raise our children in a church. That I actually don't have everything that my kids need. I actually can't teach them everything they need to learn, but thankfully God invented the church, and as the body of Christ, we can.
That's a great.
It's really good. Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to your message tomorrow even more, because I share, and I think a lot of us as mothers share that same insecurity. And it's one thing to speak to a group of women or to write a book and you just, you're like, God will take care of it. If I didn't say it the right way, if I didn't write it the right way, God will fill in the blank and he'll speak to their heart. But those little people see us at our best moments and at our worst.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we feel, they're also exposed to the world, but then you're right, we feel like everything that they do is a reflection on our ability to disciple them.
Yeah.
If it makes you feel any better, I took my son to the doctor the other day to get his flu shot. Doctor said, "Are you ready for your flu shot?" And he said, "Do you put it in my A?" I was like, what? I looked at the doctor and said, "Did he just say?" And he's like, "Yeah, he did. Yep, he did." Like, all right. Okay.
It's an opportunity for humility. Opportunity for humility.
Yep.
Sanctification.
So I'm going to take good notes tomorrow.
Okay. That's good.
Oh, man.
Okay. Wow.
Amazing.
Like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I had a question. So, when you were talking tonight, you talked about getting to the root of what is our issue? How do we get down to the root? What are some key ways to do that? What do you, looking deeper into that, how can we get down to the root of?
You mean kind of discerning what's going on underneath your insecurity?
Yeah. Yep.
That's a really great question, and I'm really glad you asked that, because I think that work is best done in community. And the reason why is we sort of swing between two extremes. On the one hand, I talk to a lot of women who would hear my message and say, you're right, I am really selfish, I am really self-focused. And what they're actually speaking is what has been spoken over them by other people in their lives. They've been told, you are a burden, you are an imposition, you are the problem. And so they hear my words and take that as just reinforcement of that. And that's why I wanted to make really clear that there is an important difference. But I think that's why being in community is so important, is you need to have people in your life who know you well enough to be able to say, no, that does not apply to this. This wound is not about self-focus. This is about your mother. This is about your father. Whatever it is, you need people around you to help you discern that. But similarly, likewise, I think we need to be thoughtful in terms of how we are encouraging one another. And so if a friend comes to you and says, I'm struggling with this sort of insecurity, to have the discernment in that moment to say, okay, what does she really need right now? Does she need me to speak to this? Is this coming from a childhood wound? Or is this something where I can see in everything that she's doing, she's all about her appearance, or she's all about how her kids are performing, or she's all about, and this could also just be you. Is this symptomatic of you're using all these things to fill something, and God's saying, like, your vision is too small. Like, you're living for something way too small. And so I think we really need each other to do that discerning work. It's really hard because we deceive ourselves. And so we need people who can speak to those blind spots.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think that especially we talked about the trauma of this past year with the pandemic, isolation, like that was a big key word. And that's hard to do when, you're by yourself and trying to dig deep into those things. So that's really good. Community is really good. So,
how detrimental do you think social media is? Like, how much of a role do you think that plays in the decline of like young people, or even people of all ages, their self-esteem, their self-worth?
Yeah. I mean, it's been hugely detrimental, and I'm sure some of y'all saw in the news that, Facebook whistleblower who came forward and said, Facebook has actual data showing that this has had terrible consequences for young women's self-esteem. And even just the spike in anxiety in the last decade or so coincided with the introduction of the smartphone. And so there's lots of data points showing that comparison via social media is extremely, extremely toxic. And the reason is, it's Instagram, social media is it's a liar. Like, what you're seeing is very often not truthful. And this plays out in so many different ways. It's playing out with young women who don't have, the wisdom and the life experience to be able to discern, like, what I'm seeing is not the truth. But this also plays out, honestly, with pastors. Like, my husband and I, we planted a church 3 years ago. We are seeing up close, behind the scenes, all the struggles, but then we'll see our other friends who planted churches, and it seems like things are just like gangbusters. Like, it's going, like, I have a friend who planted a church 6 weeks prior to ours out in California, and it just seemed like everything was going well for them, like they were exploding. It was awesome. They were killing it. And I was like, man, like, they're just doing so much better than we are. And then one day she calls me and she says, church planting is the worst. And she says, this is on Sunday, she said, this morning, 8 of our kids ministry volunteers didn't show up, and so I had to work in the kids ministry, and at the end of church, I went out to my car and I cried. And I would have never known that if she hadn't told me. And it takes, like, I see in my husband, I see in other pastors, like, we don't have, it's so difficult for us to be able to discern that, like, what I'm seeing is like the tip of an iceberg, and I'm seeing just the very best possible presentation of it, whether it's a church or whether, like, it's a person. And so I think that is, like, wreaking havoc, and I think that it is really important for all of us to be extremely discerning about our social media diet. And I use that word, like, very intentionally to think, like, what is your social media diet, in the same way that you think about, like, your food diet. And what do you because I don't think all social media is bad, but, like, what are healthy ways that you can use it, and what are unhealthy ways that you are using it, and how can you reduce those unhealthy ways? Because it is catastrophic.
That's good. It's really good. Well, we get to hear more of you tomorrow. What should we get our hearts ready for? What can you tell these ladies? What do you got? So
tomorrow, I'm going to get a lot more practical, and one thing I want to share. So everything, this overarching message comes from my first book. It's called Free of Me, and Free of Me was partially inspired by a book that I read by Tim Keller. So Tim Keller wrote a very short book called The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness that I highly recommend. You can read it probably in less than an hour. And in it's kind of very similar themes to what I presented tonight, but it was also very much like a big picture vision without any practical handles. And so at the end of that, I read it and I was like, this is a light bulb moment, but how do I live this? Like, how do I actually walk this out? Because if we all just said, well, we just need to focus on God instead of ourselves, like, It would be so easy. And so part of why I wrote Free of Me, but also what I'm going to do tomorrow is really give you guys some like practical handles on how to reorient yourself out of that really soul withering self-focus.
Well, we're excited. It's going to be good. Yeah?
Yeah, we are. You're excited, right?
Yeah.
Right. There it is. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time to chat
Yes.
with us, to answer our questions and share your heart. And we are absolutely looking forward to hearing more of you.
Yes,
Like I said,
Sharon, you're wonderful.
If we
You're
could have
amazing.
just kept you going for another 45 minutes tonight, we would.
I'm excited. I'm excited. Are y'all going to party tonight?
Yeah.
Yes, party,
Yeah.
party.
A little
Yes.
after party, so you're welcome to stick around and have some fun. There's going to be a lot of cool things going on.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to probably play another game or something before we kick out of here. But thank
Yeah.
you again, Sharon. Give
Give
Sharon
it
a
up
big
for Sharon.
hand.
One more
Thank you
round
so
of
much for
applause.
coming.